Hello there, Steve here in Sydney of the Lay Gnosis website truebluehealer.com. Today I've got something for you which is the climax of an interview between James Randi and an interviewer, and it should remove for you any doubts you have that James Randi is a shill of the highest order working to maintain the official story of 9/11, to justify the continuous never-ending fake war on terror that the US uses to attack any country it doesn't like or wants to advance its business interests. The interview is a really good example of a seasoned propagandist and a very clever media manipulator who's obviously smarter than the fawning skeptic fan interviewer. It's only about 5 or 6 minutes, I think, that runs. That's all you need to hear. But in the beginning of the interview, which I'll link to you somewhere, Randi sort of goes on about critical thinking, and it's a very sympathetic interview, and he lets Randi explain, as far as I can recall, that critical thinking is basically that everyone else is deluded except you, something like that. That's what it basically amounts to. Anyway, the important thing is when finally the interviewer's got some questions saved up, and he may have spent his decades waiting to ask these, well, years waiting to ask these questions about 9/11. And he asked Randi, first of all, what's your official take on the 9/11 story? What happened? Well, Randi goes on about religious crazies knocking buildings down. They were all deluded and hallucinating as usual. That sort of thing, and you go, the same old word crops up in all their explanations of everything. Everyone's deluded, you see. He actually says that. And then that's only an opening question, and he doesn't really answer it, of course. The numerous anomalies, well, more than you can poke a stick at are the anomalies about 9/11, for example. And the interviewer goes on to ask him about some stop frame photographic work done by somebody called defunct, and you can listen to Randi's reply on that, and it's all avoiding the question, basically. And by the time another fellow has been mentioned, Richard Gage, of the Architects and Engineers for 9/11 Truth Movement, the interview is getting, you can see, more and more desperate, and Randi keeps palming him off with his usual interview expertise, and the naive, fawning interviewer, who probably waited years to get this interview, seems to be getting more and more exasperated and resorts to begging, pleading and grovelling, and wait for it, this is what I always laugh about skeptics. He starts treating Randi with religious holiness and actually invokes heaven and earth and the afterlife in an attempt to have James Randi apply his much vaunted critical thinking to the 9/11 story, with specific reference to Richard Gage's evidence and that of Dave von Kleist, you see. To which Randi sort of skips around and just says, well, you know, all right, I'll have a look for you, I'll have a look at the evidence, but you know, I'm not an engineer, and whatever I tell you is going to be useless because I'm not a qualified engineer. I can't talk about any of these things, of course. Which is kind of self-defeating because he fully supports the official story. He's not qualified to support that either, but he does promote the official story very, very much. Totally blind to all its long list of anomalies, which I reckon any person could list 20 anomalies in 9/11. But anyway, here is the movie clip now, and I'll say a few things afterwards, okay? Yeah, I'm sure you will enjoy this. It's kind of obvious. He's out to destroy conspiracy theorists wherever he can, who might unveil the truth about 9/11 because it's so mighty fishy. And he's been employed by the military-industrial complex to do that with some budget and free access to media, which I find astonishing. I wish I could get his media coverage. Oh, don't we all? So here's the clip of the very disappointed fawning skeptic, fawning around the feet of His Holiness James Randi.
Magic fish sandwich. Okay. Rather contentious question next. What is your take on 9/11, the events that took place on that day? And that's all I'm going to...
Okay, a bunch of crazy religious zealots thought that they were going directly to paradise, and they had this strange notion in their head, which they had been taught since they were little kids. And so they gladly vaporized themselves, along with a lot of innocent people who didn't have that impression at all. And they drove into the World Trade Center, and the center collapsed, and as they sort of planned that it would. And they're all in Valhalla. No, it wouldn't be Valhalla. That's Norse, I believe.
Yes.
But they're in paradise where they think they should be with all those virgins and such. I'm sure they run out of virgins by now. But this mass deception that people have of these paradises waiting for them and everything was the reason for these people vaporizing themselves. They're not heroes. They were thinking they were going directly to paradise. And frankly, if I thought I could go directly to paradise, I don't know about the virgins. I'd want a greater number, please. But nonetheless, they vaporized themselves and all these innocent people, and they brought down the World Trade Center, and they proved to the rest of the world how stupid some people can be, and naive.
Okay, so that's your official opinion, or official statement on 9/11.
Statement and opinion, yes.
Yeah, okay. Have you come across any of the footage of Dave von Kleist as an investigative journalist, looking primarily at the visual imagery available from the different networks and some different video footage that was taken, and all he did was slowed the imagery down as you would do, like cops or something, I don't know, like slow it down frame by frame by frame, and look at that, I suppose, evidence. It's not evidence, but it's just footage. Have you come across him?
Now, first of all, that stuff was made at the time, at the event, in real time, and was recorded and can be retrieved and used again and again and again. So he can't claim that these things were invented. They were done in real time. I watched it on television live as this whole fiasco took place.
Well, he doesn't claim that they're invented. All he's claiming is that he is slowing down the footage that is available and looking at it with fresh eyes. For example, when you look closely, you don't actually see any windows on the planes, which made me think. So you haven't really come across him. Have you come across Richard Gage and what do they call them? Architects for 9/11, where a bunch of professional architects and engineers got together and trawled through the available data and extrapolated that it was impossible, not virtually impossible, but impossible for the fuel and the amount of fuel on those two jets to do what it did to the steel without the intervention of other external forces.
Yeah, well, I've heard these things, of course, but you can find an equal number of sites and equal number of experts from all over the world. In fact, 100 times as many experts who will tell you exactly the opposite. If you look for authority, if you look for anybody who has initials after their name, and you look for a negative opinion on it, you'll find them, because they're going to be there, of course, as you do with jurors in a case on trial in court. You will find some jurors who will diametrically disagree with the other jurors, in which case you may have a mistrial or an undecided verdict or whatever. So you do get differences of opinion. Okay. If you look for the opinion that you would prefer to have, you can find it, because there are divergent opinions on everything. And for the number of people, the number of engineers and so-called experts and such who have examined this thing, compared to, if you compare those that find negatively for it to the ones that find positively for it, you'll find a vast difference. There's nothing like a 50-50 judgment in this sort of thing. You'll find a very narrow spectrum. You've got a bell-shaped curve, and boy, that's a steep bell shape, I can tell you that.
Okay, so I would invite you as a task from, or an invitation from Irish Side of the Moon, to, if you have time, to view the Dave von Kleist ripple effect, and just look at it with your critical thinking, through the lens of critical thinking, the James Randi critical thinking, and email me back if you can. What's your take on it? Because I'm trying to, as we here at the Irish Side of the Moon are trying to bring into play as much critical thinking in our own viewing and listening of stuff out in the world, because there's so much information, disinformation, misinformation, that anybody that can bring critical thought in any way, as long as it is objective and can pull out and extract some simple, salient, look, here's what this is, or here, have you thought about this? So I would invite you and plead with you, because you obviously do really, really good work, and if you died and went to the Virgin Paradise, what you did with Peter Popoff alone would be, no, I'm totally serious, because this guy made my stomach churn. That would be an accolade right there. So if you could, James, I would invite you.
I will, except that I must say that engineering is not my specialty, not by any means. But I would certainly be happy to give you an opinion of it. But it's not a definitive opinion because it's not my field of expertise. Sleight of hand and trickery and psychological trickery and such, that is my field of expertise. So I can't really give you much of a definitive opinion on the 9/11 tragedy. But I certainly will take a look at it.
I will keep it to myself.
I didn't.
If you want, I can keep that to myself. That's just between you and me. I mean, I can make that agreement right now.
All right.
So, James, time now to plug your website.
So there you see an internet radio interview where two personalities couldn't be more divergent. You got the interviewer, who's a very hopeful, but I must say terribly naive person, expecting James Randi to help out with some critical thinking on some dynamite political issues. And the expert propagandist, who's now 86, James Randi, palms off the interviewer effortlessly. It's so easy to do that when you've talked to lots of people about this subject over and over again. And I can't help laughing when one atheist is asking the other atheist, using religious metaphors, would you please, I can keep a secret, just please have a look at the videos and tell me what you think. And there's just a giggle at the other end of the phone. Yeah, I'll have a look for you, but my opinion doesn't really mean much. I'm not really an engineer, you know. Didn't the interviewer expect to be palmed off? I mean, what optimism? It's not justified at all, is it? But anyway, we certainly got no doubts about James Randi and how he's actually supporting the official story, though he's not even qualified to. He's definitely sure, though he's not qualified, to know that the official story must be true. He hasn't got a single critical question, and honestly, the average person can just spot them a mile off. I mean, just the obvious things mentioned in the audio clip there. You've got apparently 30 tonnes of kerosene can now melt 200,000 tonnes of steel. So why does the steel industry not switch from coal to kerosene to smelt steel? Because blast furnaces, by the way, are in fact supplied by vast coal trains 24/7 to put out steel, to produce steel. It's one of the most demanding things, is the manufacture of steel, and it's actually keeping us on fossil fuels. We cannot leave coal behind because it's the only way to make steel, which is one of the building blocks of civilization. So if there was a way out, such as on the day of 9/11, where you could use 30-40 tonnes of kerosene to melt 200,000 tonnes of steel, I'm sure the steel industry would have looked at it very, very carefully. But I've noticed they're still using their blast furnaces. They haven't switched any of them off yet. Kind of strange, isn't it? That's just one question. Some of the other things are that, you know, just off the top of your head, I'm sure you could think up a lot more than I can. I sort of stopped following it because it was so exciting. It was distracting me from real life. But I mean, there's things like, apparently Mohammed Atta, the lead pilot, 1 or 2 seconds before he hit the building at 400 knots. He had the presence of mind and the reflexes and coordination to wind down the window of the plane 1 or 2 seconds before he hit. And he threw his passport out and it landed a mile away, and it was recovered untouched, unburned, undamaged, in pristine condition. Now, I hope he closed the window before he hit. But just a preposterous notion that that could have happened is outrageous. And then we got the problem of none of the passenger lists on the planes had Muslim names. Isn't that strange? All had European names on those planes. Isn't that strange? And it just goes on and on and on. 19 of the hijackers, the alleged hijackers, had Saudi Arabian passports. So why didn't they bomb Saudi Arabia? Why didn't they attack Saudi Arabia? Well, the answer is kind of obvious. The Republican Party decided to attack Afghanistan a year before 9/11 at some party conference, and the reasons for that were they wanted to put a Unico pipeline, that's an oil company, across Afghanistan, and the Sharia law fanatics in Afghanistan had said, no thank you, we don't need your decadent Western ways here. And the other problem was, being Sharia law fanatics, they'd also stopped the production of poppies, opium. 90% of the world's opium was coming from Afghanistan when the Sharia law fanatics, the Taliban, turned off the supply of cocaine all over the world. Well, that's another good reason to bomb them, isn't it? So there's lots of reasons to bomb a country, pipelines and cocaine, that sort of thing. So they're just a few of the little questions that come out of the 9/11, and there's many, many more. Don't we all know that? It's been said numerous times that you can watch a public domain activist and you can note the targets they criticise and denounce, and then you listen to them for a few weeks or a few months or maybe more than a year, and you gradually get a feel for what they're doing, and you then notice the pattern of what they don't denounce, what they don't attack, and that's generally the end of town they're all working for. You can apply this to all the great speakers in the internet activist world, and so in the case of, say, Alex Jones, he denounces everything except Israel and Zionism. He's a fearmonger of the highest order, and just wants to strike as much fear as he can into the non-Jewish world, the Christian world. His wife's Jewish, and he applied for Jewish citizenship and strangely couldn't get it, and he wasn't allowed to migrate to Israel because he was doing more damage to the Christian world where he was mongering his fear. So there's really no question about that. Better observers than I have, who's put more time into studying him, have come to that conclusion. Another one would be Noam Chomsky, who's kind of like the poor man's liberal intellectual foil, so to speak. He's sort of like a magnet for left-wing opinion, but strangely it was noticed after a period of time that he's never criticised the banks or the money system. So it becomes obvious over a period of time who he's really working for, and now he's going after the 9/11 truth movement, denouncing it, just like James Randi. Who are you to judge physics just by watching a building fall down? Who the hell are you? Well, we all learn basic physics, don't we, at school? And we've all noticed things like no building has burnt and fallen in its own footprint. No steel-girded building has done it before or since 9/11. Large buildings have burnt out to shells, but they remain standing. We've noticed that, haven't we? So the same thing goes for James Randi. Apply the same sort of process to him. The homeopathy and trying to protect bereaved people from losing their pocket money to fake mediums, that's all trimmings, as is the $1 million prize. His real job is doing his very best to call everyone a conspiracy theorist who dares to join three dots together and question the official story of 9/11. Now, how do we know this for sure? Well, his JREF that just closed down in Los Angeles has got the address of General Dynamics headquarters in Virginia. He's always worked out of Suite 105 in General Dynamics building in West Virginia. So it's kind of obvious, isn't it, where he's always been operating from. Rick Adams is the man worth $2 billion who apparently gets up in the morning sitting on his wallet worth $2 billion, and he says to the boys, the party faithful, he says, we have to get these homeopaths. They're doing us great harm. While we're killing millions of people all around the world since 1945, that's just a front, actually. What we're really doing is going after homeopaths, and we're going after these mediums who cheat bereaved people out of their pocket money, and then we're going to go after Bigfoot and astrology, all right? Those are the things that really matter, okay? That's ostensibly what skeptics believe, the pseudo-skeptics who believe anything they're told because they're so damn gullible. I find it absolutely laughable but tragic that for 20 years, handicapped people who've been used by the military-industrial complex to call everybody conspiracy theorists to try and keep the endless fake war on terror going forever. But that seems to be the size of it, and I just thought that little audio clip there contrasting two personality types, the naive, hopeful, highly optimistic, irrationally optimistic interviewer and the very well practiced propagandist and interview expert, Mr. James Randi, who always comes across as being very pleasant and charming and making weak little jokes, but apparently on a personal basis he shows a cruel streak. Well, that shows. Now the timing of this third event is kind of fascinating. We've got the closure of the LA office, that's the last remaining office, and retreating to Suite 105 in Virginia in the General Dynamics headquarters. That's one thing. At the same time, James Randi had his name taken off the JREF forum. It was taken down. I suspect something incriminating was taken out of it, so they couldn't be sued. I suspect that. That's my explanation. It came up a few days later, and it's all been done by Rick Adams, the multi-billionaire, you see, and now it's got a new name, International Skeptics Forum. My thinking is that this is to avoid being sued by lawyers who are becoming increasingly active, attacking people, going after people with massive defamation fines for saying evil, defamatory things on the internet. Bricks and mortar legal system is going in there and levying heavy defamation fines on people for just bad-mouthing people, such as Sally Morgan, and recently there was one in Sydney announced by Victor Zemmett in his weekly email, where a poker player going to Las Vegas was repeatedly maligned on Facebook, and he was awarded by a Sydney judge $435,000 cash damages for being repeatedly and falsely defamed. Okay, so I think this is happening. The legal advice has been given. That's my take on why JREF has been closed down, because at the moment it's only a business name. If it keeps trading, selling its souvenirs, it's still in business. So I suspect all their supplies of online stuff might just dry up, because I don't know who's going to run the business. So even James Randi is only the acting president, so they've got no permanent staff. The old forum's gone. There's no material to sue and no people, no permanent workers to sue. So it looks to me like they're avoiding being sued. What a great liability the pseudo-skeptic movement did become with its unbounded, cruel and nasty behaviour. It seems to have died of its own poisonous social behaviours. The third event that's just happened is the article by Will Storr, S-T-O-R-R, in the online Daily Telegraph, where Randi is denounced. I have not seen that ever before. The headline reads, "The great debunker finally debunked himself," something like that. And Will Storr patiently goes through all the times he's been caught lying. We all know them, there's lots of them, but it's the first time I've seen them in an online mainstream newspaper. And that to me is another signal that Randi's being disposed of, being discredited. It's a good reason to disbelieve him now. He's got no credibility left. in case of anyone suing him or defaming him or using his authority, writing from underneath his forum or anything like that. I would suspect it's no accident. I would expect it's no accident at all that article has come out right now within a very short period of the closing down of the LA office, and that's basically the disappearance of JREF. Now it's another nail in his coffin. I don't know how many nails can be put there. How many more nails do we need? One good thing I noticed about the Daily Telegraph article, which is basically doing a hatchet job on James Randi, normally he's got unfettered access to the world's media and he can do or say anything he likes, but now someone's somehow doing it to him. It's a hatchet job on James Randi, unquestionably. A fairly soft, polite one, but nevertheless the headline is a killer. I'm kind of concerned about what could happen next. Something I found very attractive about the online article disparaging James Randi in such forthright terms, certainly with the killer headline, was that for some reason I got there early on and they left the chat line wide open so I could put all kinds of information in about James Randi and the demise of JREF. And as far as I can tell, none of the skeptics know about it. Now that's been mentioned by Ben Emlyn Jones. I don't know if they're in shock and can't do anything or whether they just don't comprehend what's going on as usual. And it's kind of strange that nobody asked me a question. Where'd you get this from? Who told you that? How do you know this? Not one person questioned me. I'm typing away here, you know, JREF is finished. It's been detitled, denamed. James Randi is only the acting president, that sort of thing. And the LA office is closed down, blah, blah, blah. I'm typing madly for a whole day, you see, and I got away with it. All of these entries remained there. The moderators didn't remove them, which is very strange. Normally, you can't get in, the chat line is locked up. I'm very pleased to see that those entries are still there, and all we got is the usual pseudo-skeptics calling me a conspiracy theorist. That's only because they can't join more than 4 dots at a time, and they need to be spoon-fed something simple by James Randi and his psychological warfare experts.